Welcome back. Our next guest will tell us what you need to do to get your self-managed super fund into gear for 2014. Welcome to the show, Sinclair Taylor.
Hi Marty, how you going?
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So, firstly, what do trustees need to do to get their fund ready for 2014?
Look, this is a great time of year to really focus, or refocus as the case may be, on where you're going with your strategy. We know that the new year really is about goal setting, and around 50% of Australians set New Year's resolutions, and around 20% of those relate to trying to improve their financial position. So whether you're a member of a retail or industry fund, or you run your own SMSF, it's certainly the right time of year to dust off those bits of paperwork, pull them out of the bottom drawer, and really just check where are you at with your retirement savings plan.
So things you've got to be looking at. So obviously investment strategies.
Investment strategy is really key, and certainly if you're inside SMSF, you are in the driver's seat. You've made a very conscious decision to run your own fund, and that really means taking those reins and really making a conscious choice about where those assets are going to be allocated throughout 2014. We've certainly seen strong growth in cash over the last 12 months, notwithstanding the fact that the cash rate is at a 60-year low. So let's really make sure, if you're going to go into cash, is that a conscious decision, or is in fact that just laziness around investment decisions? And that's really a key decision. The markets have obviously had a bit of a bounce over the last 12 months as well. And some people really capitalised on that and got in early. Others are still sitting on the sidelines waiting for better information.
Anything else they should be doing?
Look, I think it's really also an important time to think about compliance. We know from the ATO's statistics that around 2% of all self-managed super funds get busted every year for some level of compliance issue. So 98% of people do the right thing, which is a really strong statistic. But a lot of these compliance breaches often relate to shoddy paperwork. So certainly it's about getting in touch with your accountant or your financial planner or whoever you're using as an advisor, and making sure they've got all the right bits of paper that they need if they're doing the compliance on your behalf.
So the ATO has released one of their annual reviews. I think it was done in June, but they released it in December.
Yeah, that's right. So in December, just before Christmas, the ATO put out its very comprehensive analysis of all the tax data relating to self-managed super for the June 2012 year. So this data is 18 months old, obviously by definition, but it certainly is the most in-depth analysis that anyone in the industry has got, given they are the regulator. They collect all this information.
And so collecting the tax returns.
Yeah, this is based on tax return data for the 500-odd thousand self-managed super funds that have put a return in. And that data is really comprehensive and certainly provides some really interesting insights and really evidences the strong growth in the sector over the past 5 years.
So what do we learn from the survey? I guess probably most importantly, investing and returns. How did SMSFs perform, say, compared to the APRA funds, which are like your industry funds, your retail funds, basically everyone else?
Look, everyone's always keen to know how does SMSF stack up against the rest of the sector. As you're aware, the tax office regulates self-managed superannuation, and APRA, as the prudential regulator, regulates the rest of superannuation. So industry funds, retail funds, and corporate super funds in particular, as well as public offer funds. You've got to be really conscious and careful around how we make those comparisons. There are different reporting regimes. There's also different methods of data collection. But what we do see is that certainly in the 5 years between 2008 and 2012, 3 of those 5 years, SMSFs outperformed APRA funds. And in one of those years, that was line ball, and one of those years, the APRA funds had the upper hand. What you've got to be careful, though, is to look at those things. They are averages. And unfortunately, most people don't perform at the average. And it doesn't matter what superannuation regime you sit inside, you need to make sure how are you performing. And certainly in SMSF, that's way more important because it is your retirement savings. So really, it's about being very conscious of using those statistics appropriately. But it does also put pay to some of the market commentary that suggests that SMSFs don't perform as well as APRA funds. I think the numbers certainly suggest they do perform very credibly. But it's about making sure your investment strategy is delivering for you if you're running your own SMSF.
And a lot of SMSFs work with advisors or brokers or, in some
That's
cases,
right.
fund managers. So,
And one of the great misnomers about this concept of self-managed super is the fact that you have to do it all yourself, which is in fact not true.
Yeah.
There is a plethora of people out there to help you manage your retirement savings, and in fact getting quality advice is something we strongly recommend. It is a very complex environment to operate within. The regulation is often changing, and that needs to be really taken into account if you're formulating your strategy.
Okay, so we've spoken about investment. Cost. How did SMSFs perform in terms of administrative costs, investment costs, compared to, say, the APRA funds?
Look, once again, it's a little bit of an apples and oranges comparison, so I'd be really careful in trying to make a direct comparison.
Yep.
That said, though, we know that the bulk of SMSFs are looking at an expense ratio of about 0.5 to 0.6%.
Yeah.
So reasonably cost efficient.
That's for administration.
Yeah, that's
no advice.
That's looking at operating expenses inside their fund.
Yeah.
This is a scale game as well. So obviously, the larger the fund, many of the costs are fixed. The lower your operating expenses as a ratio are going to come down.
Yeah.
But we've also seen through the ATO data that
On $500,000, that's about $2.5 grand of admin costs, roughly.
Yes, that's right. But we also see that the average fund is now paying over $5,000 in operating expenses per annum. So it's quite a bit of money to be shoveling out the door. Those costs have gone up a little bit in the last couple of years, but equally the average fund size has grown. So in percentage terms, the trend is certainly in the trustees' favour.
Borrowing in self-managed super. There's been a lot of, I guess, hoo-ha about this, a lot of different lines being run about the risks associated with this. The ATO and I think one of the main industry bodies, SPA, have come out and made some comments on that. But I guess the most important message is from the ATO, who are the regulator. What are they saying about borrowing in self-managed super? Should we be worried?
Look, I don't think we should be worried. The Cooper Review looked at this issue quite comprehensively in 2010. The Cooper Review did recommend that the Treasury do a review of the legislation around SMSF borrowing. That review is overdue, but I think most people in the industry feel quite confident that there is strong performance of this sector around SMSF borrowings. There isn't too much of it. There is certainly a lot of market commentary suggesting that it's grown quite significantly. Importantly, you've only got about 1.4% of all of the assets in superannuation geared. I should clarify, in self-managed super geared. So a very small amount of the assets actually have borrowings against them.
Yep.
And only about 3.7% of all the funds who inside SMSF actually borrow money. So not many people are doing this, and this really aligns to the broader messaging around SMSF is not right for everyone. Most Australians are best suited or served staying inside an APRA fund.
Yep.
Likewise, most Australians should not borrow money inside super.
Yep.
So it needs to be really consistent with your strategy, well thought out and well advised.
Yep.
But look, we are probably the largest lender in this space. We're very comfortable with the way that our loan book is performing.
Yep.
And strong origination and lending processes,
Yep.
and that really reflects the quality of the loan book.
Touch on lending, or you've spoken in detail about lending. The other area that often gets flack or creates controversy is residential property. What sort of exposure do self-managed super fund trustees have to residential property, and is it under control? Should we be worried?
Look, I think it is under control. Australians have a love affair with property. That's well documented, and certainly since the Second World War. Lots of Aussies have a really strong affinity to bricks and mortar. And inside SMSF, property investment accounts for about 15% of all the assets inside SMSF. You have a really strong distortion, of course, to commercial property. So the residential component is really only about 3.6% of all the assets. So any suggestion that mums and dads buying at auctions on weekends are driving a property bubble are well overstated. It's certainly well within check, and that 15% statistic across all property has been very consistent over the last couple of years. So not too much to worry about.
Okay, good. So your view on housing bubble, again, you're joining a long line of people now who are coming out and saying that there's nothing we should be worried about in Australia in relation to a housing bubble?
No, I don't think so. Look, Australia certainly has strong property values. We've also got a very strong economy with near full employment. So
right.
All of that suggests that the housing market is in good shape.
Thanks, Sinclair.
No worries. Thanks, Marty.